Well, welcome back, friends, to A Daily Walk. Today is Tuesday. You guessed it. You know what that means. It's Tuesday. That's what it means. God bless you. Hope you're having a good morning, getting started. We are in the book of 1 Corinthians in the 3rd chapter. And Paul has been trying to get this church to be united instead of divided. And that would be an ongoing effort. And you'll see it throughout this letter, and I'll do my best to comment on those things. And it takes work to have unity, but it is worth it if you're willing to do the work. And so Paul was encouraging them. But then he asked an important question to these believers, asking them if they knew something about themselves. And this is really important. Look at what it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16. Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? Now, if anyone defiles the temple of God, God will destroy him. For the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. Don't you know that you're the temple of the living God? The Spirit of God is dwelling in you? It's a good question to ask. When you go back to the Old Testament and you look there at the book of Exodus, after the nation of Israel had made their escape, the Lord, through Moses, led them out of bondage in Egypt. They made their way into the wilderness. It was supposed to be just a short stop on their way to the promised land. Unfortunately, it ended up lasting 40 years. Because of their disobedience. However, during that time, the Lord gave Moses specific instructions to construct what was called a tabernacle. And the tabernacle was to be a place of worship. It was to be set up in the middle of the entire nation of Israel, right in the center of the camp, surrounded by the various tribes. It was to be in the very center. And within that tabernacle, there were altars that were built. There were veils or curtains that were set up. There was one entrance in, and you would come through, and there would be the brazen altar, and there would be the laver where you would wash, and then you would go into the holy place. But there was one spot called the holiest of all places, the Holy of Holies. And it was behind a veil, and behind that veil was the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant represented the throne of God on the earth. The tabernacle was a picture on the earth of what the temple in heaven actually looked like. It was to emulate that. And in the very center of all of the people was God's throne. Later on, after they came into the promised land, fast forward many years, David had a desire to not leave God in a tent. It just didn't seem right that he was in a palace and that God should be in a tent. And so he talked to his friend Nathan and said, I want to build God a house. And Nathan said, I think that's a great idea, David. Do all that's in your heart. Oh, but then the Lord spoke to the prophet Nathan and said, you spoke too soon. David can't build me a temple because, well, his hands are full of blood. He's a man of war. But tell him that I'm going to build him a house and that his son will actually construct and build me a temple. Of course, that son that would build that temple would be Solomon. And as you read through the life of Solomon, you find that he spared no expense. David had basically put all their enemies at rest around them, so he was able to build. And Solomon went to work on this temple that took somewhere around 7 years, and it was one of the 7 known wonders of the world. It was covered in gold, and it was covered everywhere with gold, so much gold, and even marble on the outside. It was said that when you would look at the temple from a distance, that it looked like there was snow on top of Mount Zion because it just shimmered, and it was just an incredible place of worship. And not just because of the building itself, but because the glory of God dwelt above the Ark of the Covenant. God's presence filled that temple, and it stood there for many years until it was destroyed, of course, by the Babylonians, and then rebuilt again by the exiles when they returned, and then continued to be constructed under Herod, and then destroyed again by the Romans, and there's no more temple. How do we meet with God? How do we have fellowship with God? Well, Jesus came. Jesus died upon the cross. He shed his blood. He secured our salvation, and now the Lord does not dwell in temples, but he dwells within his people. through the work of the Spirit. The Spirit of God takes up residency in the believer and lives within us. In fact, the Bible tells us in Romans that the same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead dwells in us. So we are now the temple of the Lord. He dwells here, and his throne is to be upon my heart. He's to be the center of my life, as he was the center among the nation of Israel, as he was the center in Israel there in Jerusalem. He's to have his place in my heart. The Spirit of God dwells in us. And therefore, if the Spirit of God dwells in us and we, these bodies, are the temple of the Lord, what are we using them for? Are we polluting the temple of the Lord? You know, there was a time in Israel's history when they polluted the temple of the Lord. They actually brought in idols and set them up in holiest of places, and they were judged because of it. I don't want to set up anything in this temple that would defile me or hinder the work of the Spirit in my life. And so Paul is saying to these believers there in Corinth who were caught up in division, don't you know that you're the temple? Don't you know that the Spirit of God dwells in you? Don't you know that when you go the wrong direction, you divide, that you're quenching the work of the Spirit, and that if anyone defiles the temple, that he'll be destroyed? Because the temple of God is holy. It means set apart for a specific purpose. You and me, we're to be holy, the place where God dwells. How's the condition of your temple today? What's it look like on the inside? What's being established there? What is being set up there? Is it holy or is it unholy? Are the things that you're allowing into the temple that are quenching the work of the Spirit, hindering your thought life, hindering your actions, affecting your speech? What's going on in the temple today? That's a good question to ask. You know, sometimes we think of the Lord dwelling in a building. We think of the church as a means of, four walls and a roof or a sanctuary, and the church is where God is. He's in the church. And so we go to the church, the Lord's there, we meet with him, we leave, and he stays in the church. Friend, listen, the church is not a building. The church is the people. The Spirit of God dwells within us. I would encourage you today, allow the Lord God, the Spirit of God, to come through, and anything that's in the temple that needs to be overturned or removed or taken out, let him do it. Allow the Lord to show you, to reveal to you, hey, this doesn't belong here. You don't want that in your temple. Let's get rid of that. And I would encourage you to respond to that and watch once again as fellowship is restored and the glory of God and the Spirit of God and the power of God have room to work, because nothing's hindering it. May God bless you today, strengthen you, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless.